Hey everyone, let's talk about painting detail. More specifically, in this video, how I properly build up highlights. So I'll start by saying this. There's no one correct way to portray detail in your artwork or your painting. It's all a matter of taste and whether you like loose, broad strokes or you paint pretty tight, not much abstraction in your work. I'm somewhere in the middle, so for me, I don't mind abstract marks signifying the presence of detail. So here's an example of me just building the detail on spheres of a bracelet. And the sphere is possibly the best way to demonstrate this. Is what you're going to want to do is paint the sphere your base color, and then to build up the detail of it, you're going to want to think about what midtone will work best here, what midtone is present in my reference, whether it be a photo or a setup that I have in front of me. And then the highlight goes only as the final paint added. Now the reason I do this is because building up to that highlight helps create depth, and without it, that illusion of detail may not be present at the end of your work that you're doing. Now the variation between some of these is some of these beads on these bracelets have a sharp, bright highlight with not much of a build-up on it. Those black beads on the right side are more matte, and those blue turquoise colored ones are very shiny, so the highlight is very bright with not much of a build-up necessary. But those black beads that have that matte surface disperses the light evenly, and it's beneficial to add midtones in between your base color and your highlight, just to show a progression that the light is evenly spread. For something like this where the light scatters all across it and there's sort of a shiny effect to it, I tend to just try to be as random as possible and be as abstract as possible. Because in this situation, there's no set way that the light bounces off. It can be in any way, that with any movement. And try not to make any patterns, really, especially when something's natural or in nature. And speaking of nature, here's a difference between applying highlight to a shiny surface like that pot that the cactus is in, and using a similar color contouring the plant on the right. So on this pot here, which is supposed to be a shiny reflective surface, the highlights here are sharp, and there's not much of a build-up to it, like how I explained earlier. And again, with my painting style, there's not much of a tight painting structure that I'm going for, but rather placing marks in a way that the details represented without being precise with it. So here, when I'm contouring the plant leaves with my color that's not exactly white, but a color, a bluish green color with some white in it, not pure white. You never want to jump straight to pure white when I talk about, and this is what I mean when I talk about the building up to that highlight. Especially if you're dealing with some subjects that when the light shines on them, it's very bright in multiple places. You never want to give something an overexposed look by just getting white straight out of the tube and just putting it wherever you see a highlight. That'll eliminate some of the depth that may perhaps enhance the painting. If you want to find out all the different ways that I use a highlight, for example, how I did with these plants contouring with the highlight, or perhaps you want to know building up a highlight on a reflective surface, or a surface where there's no buildup required, where it's just very shiny, and perhaps you can apply with a palette knife, or even learning how to paint lettering with your brush and creating detail in that way, then you may want to look forward to checking out my class on Skillshare about painting highlights and details, where I go over all the various ways that I find I would need to use highlight. There's a lot of different ways to use highlight to touch on. So here, this is a cactus, of course, so in order to produce that illusion that there's spikes going, I give an abstract line, not a clean line, but an abstract one, just to show the illusion that there may be spikes there, even when looking up close or from a distance. Alright, now on to my favorite type of highlight that I like to do. So I've done all of what I like to call the dirty work, and now it's time to just use a palette knife, which I find very useful when applying highlights in a way that produces unique texture, unlike that a brush can do. So here I have some oranges, and all I'm simply doing here is putting white on the palette knife, because this type of highlight is very shiny, and all I need to do is create variation in the highlight to make the orange seem as though it has texture on it. And yes, something as simple as creating abstract marks with the highlight can make the whole piece look as though there's texture on it, because that's supposed to be the brightest point, the most, possibly the highest point, or most direct in the light point, which is where most of the detail may get revealed. Also, playing with texture, the brightest parts of your painting you may want to toy with the idea of adding texture, and in the shadowy areas you may want to use way less texture, and that'll create a nice illusion that there's three-dimensionality in your art, and it always ends up looking well. I think it turned out well for this painting as well. The texture in the brighter parts and the lack of texture in the shadows really brings out a realistic look, even though the painting is not hyper realistic in a close-up. If you thought this information was helpful, or if you just want to support, please like my video and subscribe. It really helps with getting my content out there. Thank you for watching.